Hello and welcome to another episode of By the Horns. Today I'm speaking to Hermann Viviers from Bitcoin about the upcoming Adopting Bitcoin Cape Town conference. The conference is running from the 26th to the 28th of January 2024, and Hermann is part of the organizing committee who's been planning the event. The theme of the conference is all about parallel institutions and how they could work with Bitcoiners to further the cause of self-determination and sovereignty. Hermann is a returning guest, and it's always such a pleasure having him on the show. Before we get into the interview, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Bitcoin Only. Have you ever tried to import a hardware wallet into South Africa? If you have, then you know it's a slow and expensive process with many hidden costs and risks, like the post office losing a package. Well, I'd like to tell you about my new company, Bitcoin Only. Bitcoin Only is your one-stop shop for all high-quality Bitcoin hardware wallets in South Africa. We stock Blockstream Jades, Cold Cards, Seed Signers, and more. We also offer Bitcoin consultations if you need any advice on your self-custody solution, or would like to set up a Bitcoin will so that your family can get hold of your Bitcoin if something unexpected happens to you. Head over to bitcoinonly.io and apply the code BTC at checkout to get a discount on your next purchase. That's bitcoinonly.io, Bitcoin for the sovereign individual. And we're live. Hermann, once again, I think you are the number one returning guest on the show. Welcome back, man. Good to see you.
I didn't know that. Short, man. Thanks. Yeah, awesome.
My pleasure. I think it's between you and Carl de Villiers. One of the Cardles, anyway.
Okay. I mean, if you add all the Cardles together, it's not a fair contest. There's like 5 of them.
Yeah, maybe we've had like at least 10 Cardles out here. Yeah. How you been though, man? You've been traveling a lot, haven't you?
Yeah. I've been doing quite a bit of traveling. If you ask my wife, it's way too much. But yeah, no, it's been a pretty intense period. I'm not used to traveling so much, but super exciting.
Yeah, man. When we first met, you were living in Mossel Bay and you were running the surf charity. And now fast forward, maybe 2.5 years later, and you traveling around the world doing Bitcoin evangelism. Life comes too fast, eh?
Yeah, no, things changed a lot since that. I mean, when we did the first interview, Bitcoin did not even exist, and the idea, it wasn't even an idea yet. Life happens.
And the best part is that surfboard behind you hasn't moved the entire time.
No, it's been there all this time. It's a very pretty board, but not very functional.
Does that ever get surfed? I was about to ask.
I surfed it a couple of times, but it's a beautiful design, but it's a horrible shape.
Yeah. So what have you been doing in the last couple of months? I mean, our last interview was probably, I don't know, 6 months ago or so. You've been in El Salvador. Have you been back to West Africa again? Where have you been?
I've been to, more recently, I was in the States. That's the one I just came back from recently, the Global Bitcoin Summit that was hosted by the HRF. And before that, I was in Prague for BTC Prague, a fantastic Bitcoin-only conference. And before that, just after that, was the Oslo Freedom Forum, which wasn't a Bitcoin-specific conference, but they had a financial track. Those were the only 3 conferences I did this year. Did a couple more last year, El Salvador, Ghana. That was all at the end of 2022.
All right. And what was your experience of like going to a Bitcoin only conference versus going to, some of the other conferences that have got some shitcoinery involved?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway from BTC Prague for me was that everybody was saying leading up to the conference, most people I spoke to was like, look, you can't do a conference for more than 1,000 people if you keep it Bitcoin only. But Bitcoin Prague obviously disproved that. They had an attendance of, I think it was more than 7,000, almost 8,000 people. Wow. And it was only Bitcoin. There was even with the booths, all the booths, which is basically carries a large part of the conference in terms of paying for having that booth space. There were maybe 2 booths in the entire conference that wasn't specifically Bitcoin focused. The rest of them were all, pretty much Bitcoin only. So yeah, I think that was very interesting. Fantastic experience.
Wow. I mean, the industry has come such a long way, like things are built in the bear markets. And to have 7,000 people attend a conference as Bitcoin only in a bear market, like, wow, things have changed.
Yeah.
Compared to the bear markets in like 2018, like you would never have seen that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's incredible, and also like it just feels to me like the sort of the mission of Bitcoin and the reason why people go Bitcoin only as opposed to crypto, whatever. It's just diverging in two completely different worlds. Like we don't even speak the same language anymore. It's just two completely different reasons for getting involved. I mean, other than the fact that there's a common theme of cryptography involved, there's nothing else that the two worlds have in common.
Yeah. So Bitboy just went to jail yesterday. Speaking of shitcoin,
I saw, yeah. Finally.
So this idiot live streams himself going to someone else's house to try to steal his Lamborghini. Right? Get that part right? And then the cops rock up. He's got his mistress in the back, along with a bunch of drugs and a gun. And then live streams himself while it's happening. And the cops are like, who have you got in the car? And he doesn't want to admit because he's on the live stream. And then he's like, oh, it's my mistress. Idiot. And
yeah, man.
Didn't he come out? He was asking for donations, and then CZ from Binance was like, no, why are you asking for donations? You got a bunch of money in your Binance account.
Yeah, no, it's just something else. It's, I don't know. It's yeah, I don't like seeing people go to jail, but then at the same time, he's been warned so many times to stop that nonsense, and yeah.
He's a scammer. He's been scamming people, like shilling.
Oh yeah, no, 100%.
He's where he belongs. It just comes back to the ethos of Bitcoin versus shitcoins, and it's just becoming more and more painfully apparent. And thank goodness, because we didn't have to keep telling people this anymore. Like people can now see it firsthand. The shitcoiners are going to jail because they are scamming people, and the Bitcoiners are going to jail because the state's coming after them, like Ross Ulbricht. Like it's a different set of values here, and people are getting shut down for different reasons. But that being said, Bitcoiners aren't really going to jail, not in mass anyway. Whereas I think the SEC is going after a lot of shitcoiners now, and there's going to be a weeping and a gnashing of teeth going forward in that space.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting conversation. I was talking to someone about this, the whole like shitcoin scene, and it kind of feels like it's a test of maturity for Bitcoin to have to go through this. It's kind of you gotta have this technology, because I mean that's one of the most valid criticism against Bitcoin is that you can copy it, and if people can copy it, they are going to copy it. And if they are going to copy it, then they're going to create a plethora of imitations and shitcoins for all the different reasons that you can possibly conceive of. And if it is an open technology, then that's going to happen, and it has to happen. And Bitcoin has to go through that and prove that it can withstand that onslaught of shitcoinery. And I think it's done pretty well so far. I mean, the Bitcoin dominance is still hovering around 50%. And it's been at that level consistently for years. So it's not going anywhere despite the onslaught. And the longer it stays at 50%, the more likely it becomes that the rest of it is going to become irrelevant. So yeah,
absolutely. And for me, it's a free speech issue. Bitcoin is built on free speech. The code is open source, so anyone can inspect it. And the only way good ideas win over bad ideas in an ethical manner is by competing and by adoption. So there's no way that we can stop shitcoinery in an ethical manner. No. So we can't coerce people to stop their shitcoinery. The only way that we can hope that Bitcoin wins out is that the battle on the battlefield of ideas, and the idea of Bitcoin is stronger, and people eventually, they reach a shilling point on this. They understand that Bitcoin is the only cryptocurrency that matters, and they naturally adopt it. And I think that's what we see playing out. And the Bitcoin dominance thing, the 50% is, in my mind, a bit of a misnomer, because that's by market cap. So money flows around, sloshes around all the time. That's just showing that 50% of the money is currently sitting in Bitcoin. But if you look at it from a hash rate perspective, And why I like to use hash rate as a proxy is actual physical work that has been done, effort and joules of energy, like not putting your money where your mouth is, putting your energy where your mouth is. And if you look at it from that perspective, from hash rate perspective, Bitcoin is like 90% dominant because there's so few proof of work coins out there actually that have any kind of hash rate behind them. I mean, what's the biggest one behind Bitcoin is probably Litecoin or Monero, right? In terms of hash rate. And those are,
No.
I don't want to shit on Monero too much because that's the one altcoin project that I actually think has got some utility. But I mean, Ethereum is not moved to proof of stake, completely captured in my opinion. But I mean, yeah. So the dominance argument for me is like how much work has actually been done in the background, and there Bitcoin is absolutely crushing.
Yeah, I mean it's the other 50%. I mean, if you look at the market cap dominance and Bitcoin sitting at 50%, the other 50% isn't even really competing with Bitcoin. It's just that there's money in it, but there's money in it because people are opportunistic and they're looking for a quick buck. But they're not. I mean, they're not even really competing with Bitcoin. But even so, the fact that it is at 50% measured purely by market cap is kind of like, I mean, they're not even competing with Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is still out competing all of them, based even on a metric that is kind of almost irrelevant. Because if you look at Ethereum, for example, it's not even the same thing. So why would you compare the two market caps? It's two completely different things. And if you talk to people who are developing on Ethereum and people who are developing on Bitcoin, their motivations are completely different. There's no commonality between why people are developing on Ethereum and why people are developing on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the other interesting thing I saw was like, obviously we've been saying this from the start about NFTs, that we were like, listen, NFTs are a scam developed to take your Bitcoin from you and another hype cycle. And I saw a post the other day that 98% of NFTs have literally gone to zero, lost all of their value. And obviously that was always going to be the case. Who would have thunk it? Like, why would a pixelated picture of a monkey smoking an energy be valuable?
Yeah.
Well, it's not. Shock and horror.
No, I mean, personally, I don't understand the idea of digital collectibles. For me, a collectible has to be something physical that I can touch. I like collecting certain very specific things. I'm not a collector by any measure, but I've got a couple of very, very special items that I treasure, but I value them because I can touch them. They're physical, they're real. It's not like, why would you want to collect something that's digital? You're never going to touch it. You're never going to smell it. You're never going to feel it. I mean, digital money makes sense, but a digital collectible, no. Why?
I mean, I could see the use case for digital collectibles, but not in the value sense that they're worth a lot of money. Like, for example, putting your university degree, you'd rather have that digitally as a PDF than, well, you'd like the physical thing, obviously, but it's much easier to have the digital as well because you can send it around. And if you can prove somehow that is not a fake certificate, then that makes sense, right? And that can be a blockchain, but that's not worth a lot of money. That's not something you can buy and sell. That's a utility type thing. And the angle that they took with NFTs was a speculative one. Obviously, that's normally how these cycles go. So I still see that there probably is a market for NFTs, but it's not going to be a speculative money making thing. It's going to be a utility thing, because some forms of certification you need to have proof of, but we already have that. With TLS certificates and stuff on the web, like those things already exist. I just don't see the gap with the NFTs really. Maybe I'll be proven wrong in a few years' time. Who knows? But a speculative asset, no. and they made the argument that, like, sorry, they were saying these are things you'll be using games, and like you can use your digital collectibles in games for, like, skins and guns and different things in games. I mean, sure, but like that's kids using their parents' money while they're playing games in their basement, right? Like how big is that market ever going to be, really?
Yeah, and do you really need those things to be on a blockchain? I mean, I don't know. I doubt it. I mean, it's funny. Like I went through my own shitcoining phase, and it's kind of been a couple of years since then, several years. And the first thing that I've seen that really makes sense to me, where a similar type of technology is applied, is Noster. and I've gotten really into Nostr, and I love using it, and I love seeing how the technology is emerging and how people are building and how feverish the development is and how passionate people are about building it. And it kind of uses similar technology to Bitcoin, similar underlying not technology, but more the sort of the general structure. It resembles the Bitcoin network in many ways, and I think it's very telling that I've always thought that there will be more applications of the kind of technology that Bitcoin uses, but I don't think there's going to be currency involved because we already have the currency. The currency is Bitcoin. Now you're going to take that technology and you're going to apply it to communications. And so you see Nostr emerging. And it's a similar type of technology, but you're not going to have the Bitcoin technology applied to communication with a shitcoin currency involved because you already have the currency. You just need to build out the technology for communication specifically. And so maybe with things like NFTs, like what you're saying, is it does make sense to apply that in certain areas, but not the speculative hype cycle where there's all this money being thrown at it. It all makes sense for things like university degrees, tickets for events or whatever. That kind of technology maybe makes sense there, but it's not going to be this thing where everybody's got to have their own fucking shitcoin on a blockchain. That's all hype cycle and speculation. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it all comes back down to network effects, right? Like if you're building money and communication networks are the two best examples of network effects and why, the biggest wins and there is no second place. If you can build a money that is universal that people can use with very easy on and off ramps, and Bitcoin obviously has met this criteria, then the next thing you do is a communication network, because then those two can build them on layers on top of each other. And it was interesting because they try to build that on top of the Lightning Network. They try to build remember there were a few projects that were trying to build communication networks on top of Lightning, and they never really went anywhere. And I think probably one of the reasons was Lightning was too immature, and probably still is too immature, and was never built for communication networks. It's built for transferring value, small packets of data around. I think I was having a conversation with Carla Cohen about this. And she was saying back then, and I didn't quite grasp it, but she was saying, listen, like Lightning is meant to send small packets of data backwards and forwards. It's not meant to transfer large data size. And with communication networks, you're transferring large packets of data. So like you're going to end up spamming the network and spending a lot on fees. And, your node's going to need more storage space and all kinds of stuff. So there's problems there. And here we are a few years later, and we have Nostr now. And you're right, like Nostr is absolutely, it blows my mind. What people are doing there, and having the world's first truly censorship resistant communication technology is powerful, and it couldn't have come at a better time, because we are just seeing attacks on free communication from the nation state level happening all around the world simultaneously. And we need to build free and open communication networks like our lives depend on it, because they do. And I think anyone, if you're concerned about free speech, you should get on Nostr, because that is the one place where you're not going to be censored. And I mean, look at what's happened to Russell Brand now. The UK Parliament wrote a letter to Rumble to try to shut him down, because obviously YouTube bent the knee immediately, shut him down, demonetized him. And then Rumble took a stand. They were like, no, we're not going to do that. But you're still relying on a company to do the right thing. You're still relying, those people, leverage can be forced onto the CEO of Rumble, like they can go, and if they really wanted to, which they do, shut up Russell Brand, they will get Rumble to bend the knee. Like it's a publicly traded company. Like there's people that you can leverage. So ultimately you need a free protocol, that there's no people to censor, or there's no people to apply pressure to. And that's what we have with Nostr now. It's great. And the user experience has gotten a lot better. Eh? Like it's not that hard to use anymore. It's getting much easier.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a lot better and it's I think it's a very important point to say that, and I was kind of watching Russell saying this too. And I was like, yeah, dude, Rumble is only in favor of free speech for now. It's only a matter of time. It's if it can be pressured, it will be pressured, and if they can censor it, they will censor it. And it's a company, and it's a centralized service, so it's only a matter of time. And it's if they're desperate enough, it'll happen. It's almost unavoidable if it becomes big enough, and if they become desperate enough to want to do it. I think things like Nostr is absolutely crucial. I think Nostr will become perhaps even bigger than Bitcoin faster, because I think people are shut out of communication before they're shut out of their bank accounts. They've taken Russell Brand off of his platform and disconnected him from his audience before they shut down his bank account. The next step is to maybe shut down his bank account. So there's even a more desperate need for open communication. So yeah,
100%, absolutely. I've been saying this for years. If it can be co-opted, it will be co-opted. So we have to build. We have to build censorship-resistant tools, and the one thing where they can always stop you is in the physical meat space. Like if you look at David Icke, for example, you've got to take the extreme examples first, because that's where they'll push it to, right? So David Icke, he's the guy who came up with the lizard people concept. Personally, I love that concept. I think it explains politicians extremely well. But they shut him up, so he's not able to speak. He was removed off Twitter, removed off platforms like that. Same as Alex Jones, not let back on again. They unbanked him, his ability to transact removed, so he can't create a living for himself, which is by speaking and publishing books and talking, and now he can't market himself. And now he can't transact because they shut his bank accounts down. And now they've revoked his ability to travel through the Schengen area. He's a British citizen. And he can't travel through Europe now. And obviously they use the charge of he's an anti-Semite. That seems to be the go-to these days. And so now they've literally locked him in that muddy little island of England, and that's where he's kind of stuck, where he's being politically persecuted.
Muddy island.
I just spent 2 months there. I can confirm it is a muddy place. And that's kind of like what it paints the picture what will happen to the rest of us dissidents. It's not just, we are all Alex Jones at the end of the day. If you once this like censorship industrial complex gains more and more momentum, that's what they're going to be doing. So yeah, it's vital that we are able to transact and we're able to do it. And then the one place where they will stop us, they've got it stitched up, is free movement. It's ironic that if you are a illegal immigrant, you can come right in. But if you are someone who's trying to stand up against the state, they'll use every single tool they can to stop your movement. Don't travel on a plane, travel on a boat is apparently the message they're sending here. So yeah, interesting times. Which actually segues me very nicely into this this project you and I have been working on. I mean, we started the conversation beginning of this year about a Bitcoin conference in Cape Town, along the lines of what we're speaking about right now.
Yeah,
it was in January.
Yeah, it was
maybe
about
end of last year.
Yeah, it was around there. I think it was when I came back from El Salvador in November, December. We started like throwing the idea around. So it's been almost a year.
Yeah, and so this is what we are now. We've I mean, you've taken the lead on this with Kotsatsu from Machankura and Max. But Bitcoin conference in Cape Town, it's happening January next year.
Yeah, man. It's it is an interesting segue into that topic, because unfortunately, I think the as much as I like this country, and as much as I like living here, I think the situation is on a precarious trajectory. And we are not heading in the direction that El Salvador is heading in, although a lot of people have their criticism of what's going on there too. But it's just, when you go there, you feel this positive vibe, you feel this positive energy. There are places in the world that is on that sort of trajectory. Very few, I suppose, but South Africa is definitely not on that trajectory. It feels like we're heading down this sort of very dark avenue of more authoritarianism, confiscation of sort of personal wealth, just blatant corruption. Things are falling apart. It's not a particularly positive feeling, and that's sad. So yeah, I think my initial motivation was to do a conference to try and do something about that, because I think that Bitcoin has a role to play there. I think it has an important role to play there, and yeah, I think I'm excited. It's going to be interesting to see how we can incorporate Bitcoin into trying to make a better situation out of a bad one. Because there are people building alternatives, and those alternatives are going to need a money that's uncentrable. We haven't seen massive devaluation in the South African currency overnight yet, and we haven't really seen massive confiscation of private property just yet. But it's definitely something that the government here has been talking about more and more and more, and sort of moving in that direction, and seem to have a complete disregard for the reality that could lead to. And I have some personal experience with family moving abroad. People. It strikes me that anyone that can afford to is thinking about leaving South Africa, and people who cannot afford to leave South Africa is thinking about relocating to the best place within the country possible. But it's not like people are positive about the future here. They seem to have a very adversarial stance, and someone has to try and do something about that. And I'm hoping that this conference can make a contribution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the theme of the conference, for those who don't really know yet, is the confluence of parallel institutions and Bitcoin. And the reason why we came up with this topic, for why it's so important, is because luckily there's people in South Africa, extremely capable, well-organized, competent people who realized long before we even were thinking about this kind of thing that South Africa needs a solution, and that solution is not going to come from the state, and it's not going to come from politics. And the solution is rolling up your sleeves and doing it yourself. And I think in my personal opinion, we are among the world leaders here in South Africa of parallel institutions, of people who formed organizations and they clubbed together to self-organize, who are building alternatives to the state in every different avenue you can imagine. It starts with filling potholes, but then it moves to building your own schools, building your own universities and colleges, your own insurance companies, your own firefighting departments, your private security, farm watch, everything. And these guys, people might know I'm talking about, the likes of AfriForum and Sakeliga and Solidariteit, but there's a bunch of smaller institutions as well that are doing similar things. And these guys have been doing it for, in the case of AfriForum, almost 30 years. And they have been extremely successful. And they've realized, this Russ Lamberti is one of the keynote speakers at the conference. He wrote an article about this about a year and a half ago, and he said it's time to dig your trenches, because, like you say, every South African has thought about leaving, who has the opportunity to leave. But where do you go? Because COVID has shown us that the grass is not greener, and there's tyranny and authoritarianism creeping everywhere. Like Australia, in my opinion, handled COVID horrifically. It showed its true face for turning into police state. New Zealand, even worse. America, depending what state you're in, arguably even worse. England was bad. The whole of Europe was bad. So where'd you go? And I think Russ Lamberti's answer is you don't go.
El Salvador.
Yeah, you go to El Salvador, but there's a cultural issue there, right? Because El Salvador is a Spanish-speaking country, and they've got their own, and they're Catholic, and they've got their own culture. And specifically, no refugee ever wanted to leave their country. People like where they are. They've got their family ties, and you could be from Eritrea, you could be from Ghana or Libya or South Africa. Like, it doesn't matter. Most people don't want to leave where they are because their family is there, their network is there. Like, they have a love for their land. They don't want to go. And I think this is what AfriForum and Sakeliga, etc. have got right. And they're like, guys, don't go. Build. You need to build alternatives here, because you can flee, and if you flee, you're going to be even more divided in a country that you've got no real momentum behind you to make changes, and you could end up in New York City, for example, living in your authoritarian nightmare, or California. So the answer here is to build your own alternative, and that's what these guys are doing and have been doing extremely successfully. I mean, Solidarity built that trade college in Pretoria that is so successful. I mean, the biggest single donation they got was 10 Rand. And they got thousands of donations from all their members, but the biggest individual donation was 10 Rand to build that thing. And they built it all on donations. It is insane. These guys, no corruption, built on time, under budget, and I think they've got their second batch of graduates out in the workforce already. And because it's part of Solidarity, which is a trade union, they've got almost guaranteed jobs where they're going. And the Solidarity trade union is very different from the trade unions that we think of, which are like these socialist movements, whereas the Solidarity trade union is more a Christian trade union in the capitalist sense, which is a whole nother discussion by itself. But the point is, I've been hammering on this for a while. These guys have achieved so much success, and they're doing great. But if their ability to transact is taken away, if they become such a stick in the eye of government, obviously, if it can be co-opted, it will be co-opted, and the government will come after them. And you and I, being in the Bitcoin space, have seen this. You will be unbanked. I mean, I ran when I was running Bitboy, myself and Brandon, we got unbanked by Nedbank. They were like, we're giving you 3 months, we're shutting down your accounts, you guys are being unbanked. Now starting my new company, same story with payment gateways. You got Bitcoin in your name, we're not serving you. And I'm like, hey, listen, but I don't sell Bitcoin, I sell computer hardware. It's like hardware wallets. Don't care. So the like choke points are happening, and if AfriForum has to lose their ability to raise donations from their members, they will go bankrupt very quickly. And so this is why Bitcoin is super important. And this is what we're trying to achieve in this conference here, is bring these guys who have the practical experience of building alternatives and building the systems that work in the most adversarial environment you can not quite imagine, but it's a very adversarial environment where you're being called a racist all the time, classic go-to, your members are being attacked on their farms. There's quite a harsh environment to do things, and the government's trying to stop you wherever they can, but still achieving success. But bring those guys together with the Bitcoiners who figured out how to build a censorship-resistant money, and I think you've got a very powerful ally that can, you can build a very powerful movement there. So in a nutshell, that's what we're trying to achieve at this conference. And what I see is that Bitcoiners from around the world haven't seen firsthand how things can be built, how parallel institutions can be built that you can use to effectively not combat the state, but just the most likely scenario is just the state will decay around you, like South Africa, and you've got to fill that vacuum. So that's what we're after.
I think South Africa is a little bit further along in terms of the sort of the inevitable progression that a centralized entity like the state sort of follows. It's kind of, centralization, and it happens throughout history. It's happened very slowly, but I mean, I'm trying to work my way. I don't get much time for reading with the kids, but I read when I can. And I'm busy working my way through a book that looks at, and it's a very well explored theme, but it looks at the parallels between our world today and the Roman Empire, and how the Roman Empire slowly over time just sort of degraded, and how the role of centralization, how it's sort of this common theme throughout. The further along it goes, the more centralized the power becomes, the more power it seeks. The more power it seeks, it drives centralization even further. And it's sort of this, it goes back to human nature, really, where, you have power, you want more power. Nobody's ever gotten to a position of power where they say, oh, that's fine, I've had enough now. You just want more and more and more and more. Typical behavior for a drug addict also. And you just want more and more and more, and it's never enough. And we see this in South Africa as well, where, and I think in South Africa, what's different is that it's happened a lot faster. It's happened way, way faster, because it's essentially taken about 30 years for a situation to go from the miracle of the world to being a cesspool of corruption and hopelessness. It's a very quick turnaround. When South Africa had its democratic election in '94, I mean, I'm old enough to remember that. I had my mind and my consciousness by that time. I have very clear memories, and growing up as a teenager in the immediate post 1994, I was filled with hope and exuberance, and I thought, "Fuck, this is amazing." South Africa is just gonna go incredibly well, and that turned around very quickly. And it comes down to people not being able to handle power. It's the world's most potent drug that there is. And it's just turned a hopeful situation into a cesspit of corruption and incompetence, and so the state will collapse everywhere eventually, because centralization, it's built into it, but it's happened so fast. Whereas if you look at countries like Europe, I mean, Japan is a classic case where they've, how look at how indebted that government is, and they just sort of found a way to sort of, cruise along. Europe sort of has a similar feel to it. It's such an old place, and it just feels like they're just sort of like cruising along. But it feels like in South Africa things have accelerated, and so you've seen a faster buildup of alternative movements, and people have realized, and it took them less time to realize that, hey, we're going to have to make a plan here. We're going to have to make a plan, because if we don't make a plan, the alternative is nothing. And so I think the conference has something to offer the rest of the world, particularly in Bitcoin, because we often like to talk about alternative structures. I mean, Bitcoin itself is an alternative structure. Bitcoin is an alternative structure to state-controlled money. But what do other structures look like? You can't drive your car on the Bitcoin network. You need a road to drive your car. And the classic question for libertarians is always, well, who's going to build the roads? And I think in South Africa we're going to find out. We're going to find out sooner than what people are going to find out in other parts of the world. Who's going to build the roads? Those types of questions. It's sort of like a running experiment, and Bitcoin definitely has a place to be in that situation, because you cannot build that road if you don't have money with which to do it. If your money falls apart, you can have all the workforce in the world. You're not going to be able to pay them. So how are you going to build the road?
We missed a trick when we were thinking of the name for this conference. We should have called it the Proof of Work Conference, because the parallel institutions in South Africa are literally proof of work. Like, these guys have put in the absolute hard yards, and their members, because all of them are like NPOs basically, their members fund them. And people must understand that their members are normal members of South Africa who already pay taxes to the hilt. Remember, we're a very highly taxed country. So they paying extra on top of their taxes to actually get things done. And it just shows you like how low your tax rate actually needs to be to get stuff done, because these guys are probably paying single digits of their after-tax income into these institutions to fix things, and they're getting fixed. Roads, education, healthcare, all of that. It's being done by highly motivated, skilled individuals who are just putting in the work. So for Bitcoiners we all talk about proof of work, and Bitcoin to come and see real proof of work happening in the meat space in other avenues, I think that is a really, really potent thing that European Bitcoiners, for example, just haven't had to deal with, because things still function. We're functioning quite well in Europe by and large. And now you can come and see it firsthand. And the other thing is the guys on the other side of the fence, the parallel institution guys, like, they all know about Bitcoin. Some of them are more orange-pilled than others, but they're not. The rand hasn't let them down massively just yet. It's been the slow decline of their purchasing power, but they can still transact, and they can pay contractors, and they can get things done. Our banking network works quite well, so to move money around is really easy. So we need the Bitcoiners to come over and to speak to these parallel institution guys and be like, hey, listen, come and look at this persecution that we've suffered in our countries, where the financial network has been weaponized against us, and Bitcoin saved us because we can still transact. And like, that meeting of the minds is what we're trying to achieve here and create a forum where these two groups can learn from each other. And I think it is just the best melting pot we can put together in the world for this to happen. And I think it's got
Yeah.
legs for future years to keep growing. And in 10 years' time, we might be sitting here having this conversation where we've got 10 years of conference history behind us, and South Africa could be the new El Salvador, or at least pockets of it. Because I don't.
Yeah.
And this is what the guys from AfriForum, where I've spoken to them, have told me. It's like the whole of the country cannot be saved. You cannot save the whole of South Africa. AfriForum, Sakalikhaitel cannot save the whole country. You can only save people who want to be saved, and it's only pockets, it's communities that self-organize that can save themselves by using these frameworks and these toolkits that are there. And Bitcoin is a toolkit, and self-determination is a toolkit. So it'll be interesting to see which pockets of the country decide to help themselves. And it's proof of work. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day.
No, 100%. And I mean, like, I neither support nor oppose this movement, this internal migration that has happened from the rest of the country to the Western Cape. I don't want to see the Western Cape break away from the rest of the country, but I'm also understanding that is a possibility. It's like I'm not pushing in either direction. It's more a case of I'm watching as it happens. And I happen to live in one of the areas that have seen a massive influx of people over the last 2 years. The amount of development that's happening here is just insane. And two months ago during the June school holidays, I took my family on a road trip through South Africa, and we drove through 3 other provinces. Drove over 4,000 kilometers with kids. That's quite something. And it's weird. It is almost weird to see that the only development that's happening in those provinces is development that is funded through debt, state level debt, and that's the sort of the kind of like highways, where government can borrow money to spend on highways. But private development, where developers come in and they build houses and housing estates, and those zero, nothing. Whereas it's the opposite in the Western Cape, which is the province that we're in, where Cape Town is the capital, where it's just a massive influx of people. And then, when I said earlier that everyone that can afford to is thinking about leaving South Africa, everyone that can't afford to leave South Africa is thinking about moving to the Western Cape. And again, I don't necessarily support that, but I don't oppose it either. I'm more sort of observing it because I think it's very interesting, and I think it's naive to deny the reality that on the ground the country is already dividing itself in two. You have this part of the country which is seeing massive development and influx of people. Businesses are moving here. People are bringing their families here, even if they still work in the sort of the economic capital in Joburg or wherever. They're moving their family down here and they fly up and down or whatever. And if that keeps happening, the national government has already expressed its dislike of, and that dislike is not the appropriate word. They probably have more harsh words to say about it, but they've already expressed that this is not something that they even want to acknowledge is happening, but it is happening. And so the question becomes, well, if this continues happening, and if there's nothing that can be done to stop this, then again, eventually what's going to happen is people are going to have to find an alternative money system to go where they want to go. We've seen the same thing happen in other situations around the world where when it comes to that point and you want to leave, the most difficult thing to do is to leave with your money. You're not going to be able to leave with your house. You're not going to be able to leave with your stock portfolio. You're not going to be able to leave with gold bars stuffed up your ass. You're not going to be able to leave with cash in a backpack. How are you going to leave? And so there, Bitcoin too has an important role to play. And I hope it doesn't come to that. But the trajectory is pointed in that direction, and the trajectory has accelerated over the last 2 to 3 years. It's been happening for almost a decade, but it's accelerated. And so when you talk about pockets of the country, that's the kind of situation I think of, because I don't think this is the only part of the country where that could happen. This could happen in other parts of the country too, where you find communities pop up, where there's a community of people in a certain geographical area, and they're all concentrated there. And it's the kind of community that wants to do something constructive and positive, and they necessarily have to operate independently from the government because they want to do things that government is not doing. And so in those pockets, the question becomes, well, who's going to be doing that and how are they going to do it and what money are they going to use to do it? And those are three questions that I think is central to this conference. We want to identify the people that are going to be doing this, and we want to look at how they're going to do it, and we want to look at which money they're going to use in order to do this, because in the long run, it's almost guaranteed that they're not going to be able to use state money to do these sorts of things.
Yeah. And, put Bitcoin aside. Imagine Bitcoin didn't exist at all. I think the South African rand is doomed to failure, even if the Bitcoin does not exist, because the South African government, on its current trajectory that it is on, is incapable of organizing a piss up in a brewery. So it will not be capable of holding a monetary system together. There's no way that you can preserve the purchasing power of the rand when you're running a criminal organization that is not even capable of covering up its own crimes. These are not competent people. This is just a gang of thugs marauding and looting. And South Africa, on its current trajectory, is heading towards balkanization. And I don't say this with any relish. I wish this wasn't the case, because typically balkanization is followed by civil war, because the central power does not want to give up control over its fiefdoms. And unfortunately, I think that is the direction we're heading in. And the only hope we can have is that the Western Cape can pull a Slovenia during the Yugoslav War. And if people are familiar with what happened in the Yugoslav War, there was war that broke out between Croatia and Serbia, and they were fighting each other. And Slovenia at the same time was like, okay, guys, we opting out of Yugoslavia as well. We're leaving. And they just seceded while the other two were fighting each other. There was 10 days of war between Croatia and Slovenia, because Slovenia sits north of Croatia and Serbia down below it. And there was 10 days of war between Croatia and Slovenia. And then things were still heating up down in Serbia and Croatia. So they focused their attention there. And Slovenia managed to exit with very minimal war that actually took place in Slovenia, and didn't really get damaged that much, only 10 days. Whereas Croatia and Serbia had like genocides and all kinds of atrocities, and then NATO came in and bombed it and was an entire shit show. But so no one wants civil war. It's terrible. It's this massive destruction of capital, human lives, history, culture, everything. It gets destroyed. But I think the best we can hope for is that places like KZN, the Zulu nation, secedes from the rest of the country before the Western Cape does. Because there's so many different cultural groups, they all kind of go in their own merry way and secede, and that leaves the Western Cape, gives us the wiggle room to secede ourselves without civil war. But who knows? Who knows what will happen? I think everyone wants to avoid that if possible. But I think it's very important for people to realize that we're not cheering on secession with relish. We don't want this to happen. And the conference is not about Western Cape secession at all. The conference is about how do people self-organize and build solutions so that you're not just a jellyfish, responding to stimuli when the state does what it wants to do. You actually have different cards to play, and you can be the master of your own destiny here. I think that's what this is all about. So the situation is very real here in South Africa. We are staring at monetary collapse. In my mind, it's a given. It's just a matter of time. And who knows how long it could take. It could be 2 years, it could be 2 months, it could be 20 years, who knows? But it's going to happen. And like you say, you can't leave. We already have capital controls in place. You can't leave the country with your house, your stock portfolio, all of those things. That Indian guy who they found the gold up his ass, the metal detector will go off. And the last thing the government will do when you try to leave is strip everything from you, because obviously the rats are abandoning the ship. They're trying to plug the holes. They're going to try to rob everyone as much as they can before you go. And Bitcoin is the only asset that you can reliably leave the country with, because it's not anywhere. It's in cyberspace. You remember 12 words, you're out of there, bro. You walk across that border stark naked. There's nothing I can do. But this conference is not about abandoning the ship. It's about plugging holes and building lifeboats, and ultimately trying to build a whole new ship or fleet of new ships, smaller ones that, go in their own separate ways. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting, but it's real. It's not theoretical for us anymore.
Yeah, I wanna take a small step back, because it's kind of an interesting comment that you make. Like, I mean, like I said, I don't support neither oppose the secession of the Western Cape, but I'm observing the situation, and observing it with a very sort of sober perspective. It's like, well, the most constructive thing that you can possibly do is to start from a point where you simply acknowledge reality for what it is. And the stupidest thing that you could possibly do is to start from a point where you so badly want one particular outcome that you don't acknowledge reality for what it is, and you mistake reality for what you want it to be. And this goes back to a comment that you made earlier on, with regards to, and this is, with the Bitcoin and the whole crypto shitcoin industry, where the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, is going after some of these altcoin projects like Ripple and so on. And then one of the comments I see on Twitter is people shouting at Bitcoiners and saying, "Yeah, but you guys are supposed to be all libertarian and so on, and now you're cheering on the government." And it's like, no, we're not cheering. At least speaking for myself, I'm not cheering on the government. I'm simply saying that I told you so. Looking back several years ago, and looking at the centralized nature of this project of yours, which you claim to be decentralized, but which is in fact completely centralized under the control of a company, you could have imagined that, look, this is going to turn into a situation where, are you selling securities or are you not? And it's simply Bitcoiners have been sounding the so-called alarm bells for many years, and now that's happening, and now we're saying, well, look, this is kind of what we said is going to happen. That doesn't mean I'm supporting the government going after these people. And it's a similar situation with what we find in South Africa, where it's secession or not secession or whatever the case may be. I don't really support it either way, but the reality of the situation is what it is. And the best thing that you could possibly do is to acknowledge the reality and plan for the different possible outcomes. One of those possible outcomes is that secession does happen, and another possible outcome is that it doesn't happen. But either way, the situation is such that it's become very clear that we have an incompetent government, and that it makes sense to think about building alternatives, because it's become pretty clear that government is failing at its own mandates. And the most obvious example is the one that we have with electricity in South Africa, where they've taken on the role of, look, we're going to provide electricity for the country. Eskom is entirely state-owned. We don't want private companies to come in and do energy generation or distribution. But they're failing. They're failing at the target that they've set for themselves. So it's just become clear as daylight. No pun intended. It's become clear as daylight that you have to put solar panels on your roof, otherwise you're fucked. So it's not that I want state failure. It's just that I want electricity. And if that's what you want, then the reality is that you're going to have to make your own alternative plan to do that. And it's similar with other institutions. And it's just, the conference is not about cheering on secession of the Western Cape. It's not about cheering on state failure. It's not about any of those things. It's about recognizing the necessity for people to come together and make a plan, and to do so in small but organized groups, because the larger political structure is not necessarily, I think, in any case, the place where those solutions are going to come from. And that's what the conference is about. It's about bringing these groups of people together. And one of those groups is a bunch of Bitcoiners who understand the technology, the developers, the people who are using it on the ground. And another one of those groups of people are people who don't necessarily use or develop on Bitcoin, but they're building structures that we all need: alternative energy, alternative legal structures, alternative roads, security companies, fire, all those things that generally is dependent on the state. And just to bring those groups together and say, hey, look, the reality is what it is, and what can we do to prepare ourselves for whichever possible outcome ends up happening.
Absolutely. Yeah, perfectly said, man. And the other thing that's included in the conference, so obviously it's 2 days from the 26th to 28th of January next year. And the other thing that's included in the conference is taking people on a trip to Mossel Bay down to Bitcoin Ekasi. What's on the agenda there for them when they get to Mossel Bay?
Yeah, I mean, I think we basically just want to generally when people come to visit the project, the aim is really just to show how Bitcoin can be introduced, how it can be used, and how it can be used even in circumstances where you wouldn't expect it to be able to work. I was having this conversation with somebody not so long ago, and I was trying to make the point that it's not necessarily about the number of shops that we have on board. It's not about the number of transactions. It's not about adoption. Adoption does not necessarily translate into, overnight there's 100,000 people using it. It's more a case where what we're trying to do here is build a small sort of proof of concept of what does Bitcoin adoption potentially look like in circumstances where you wouldn't have thought it could work. Because I think a lot of people are hesitant to adopt Bitcoin, and they think, well, maybe Bitcoin works for those people, or it works for those people, or maybe Bitcoin works for that person because they've got a lot of money to invest, or maybe this person is able to use Bitcoin because they've got a high level of technical skill, or maybe this person can use Bitcoin because they've been in this space for many years, they completely understand it, and so on and so forth. And what we're trying to do with Bitcoin Ekasi is say, no, look, you can adopt Bitcoin and you can use it even if you don't have any of those things. Even if you don't have a huge amount of capital to invest, even if you don't have massive technical knowledge, even if you don't have a large amount of experience in the space, you can still adopt it, you can still use it, and it can still be beneficial. And the idea would be to bring people to the project and to demonstrate that this is how we did it here. It could be done in other ways elsewhere, but the point is that it's possible. And there are many benefits to taking that leap of faith, so to speak, and say, okay, let's try and introduce it, let's try and adopt it. If it could work in a township, then maybe it could work for my organization here or this organization there. But surely, if it could work in a township, there's no practical reason why it can't work anywhere else. And that's really what the visit to Ekasi is all about.
Yeah, so if it can work in the most adversarial environment, basically known to man, it can definitely work everywhere. Like, what's your excuse? If you can make this thing work in a township, you can definitely make it work in your suburb or in your town or in your home. Definitely. Yeah. So tell me, where can people get hold of tickets? What's the website for the conference, and where can they get tickets?
There's a pinned tweet at the top of the Bitcoin Ekasi Twitter profile that gives the official conference announcement. The website's on there as well, but it gives a nice overview of the conference. And the website is at adoptingbitcoin.org/Cape Town -2024. So you just go to adoptingbitcoin.org/Cape Town -2024. But if that URL is too long to remember, you can basically just check the Bitcoin Ekasi Twitter profile.
I'll put it in a link in the description of the video as well. But we're also running specials for South Africans, if I recall rightly. If I remember rightly, there's a different pricing structure. So if you're South African, you can get a South African ticket. You just have to show your ID, right?
Yeah, you just got to show your ID at the door, but no one's going to keep a copy of your ID. So we don't take. We're not going to make a copy and keep that anywhere. It's not going to be a sort of a KYC honeypot of data, so to speak. It'll basically just be a doorman at the door just to verify that you are a South African citizen, and you'll be let in with your South African ticket. Just one other thing maybe worth mentioning is that the South African, the ticket prices for international visitors will be going up at the end of each month. So the August prices went up at the beginning of September, and the September prices will be going up at the end of September, and then October, November, and so on and so forth. But the ticket prices for South Africans will remain the same up until the day before the conference. That being said, if you are a South African, don't be South African and wait until the day before the conference to buy your fucking ticket. Buy it now, because we need ticket sales in order to put on the conference. And so if you are thinking of going to the conference, just buy a ticket, get it done with. Don't be a typical South African and wait until the week before the time to buy their ticket. The more tickets we sell, the further in advance, the more guaranteed we are of actually putting on the conference in terms of attendance.
The other thing is, if you wait, you might actually not get a ticket because we're very limited in the amount of tickets we're selling. This is going to be a small conference, specifically because we want to keep it intimate. We want to facilitate discussions between people and get people to actually form connections and meaningful bonds. And you can't do that with 1,000 people at a conference, but you can with 350. So we're limiting these purposefully to keep it tight.
Yeah. Another thing that I definitely want to mention is just to add on to that is that there is a hard cap limit on the number of tickets that we can sell. The venue has a certain number of people that they will accommodate, and we cannot actually sell more tickets. So it's not a case where I think we're going to sell 300 tickets. We can't sell more than 300 tickets. And if we get to the point where we've sold 300 tickets, that's it. We cannot actually accommodate more people. The venue won't let more people in than that. So if we get to 300 and that's it, then you've lost out. That, and the other thing that's worth mentioning is that I had a recent experience in the US at the Global Bitcoin Summit where the audience was much smaller. There was only about 150 people in attendance. Compared to the larger conferences, I mean, even adopting Bitcoin in El Salvador, which is considered a small conference, it's 1,000 people. It's a massive difference. You just have such a more intimate interaction with everyone there. You know, you get to speak to people that you otherwise would never have the opportunity to speak to. You know, we are going to have some headline speakers who, these are the kinds of people who at one of the larger conferences somewhere else in the world, you'd probably never get the chance to go up to them and just have a casual chat. Whereas if you're doing it in a smaller conference setting, you can actually do that. There is the time. And they're not surrounded by a throng of people. They have more time available for the people at that conference. So it is a very different setting and definitely worthwhile getting a ticket as soon as possible.
Yeah. And there's also going to be a couple of side events around it. Like, for example, we're going to have the Bitcoin Braai beforehand. So, you know, if you're a foreigner, it's a great place to come and experience South African culture, have a braai and actually get to meet these people before the conference and share a meal with them and have a chat. So it's going to be a very personal experience. The other thing, I want to shill a mutual friend of ours' company. It's not even a company, actually, because it's just a Bitcoin thing. It's called AirBTC. And basically, if you're a Bitcoiner, it means you can go and stay with other Bitcoiners. So if you've got a property in Cape Town that you want to put on AirBTC, head over to his website, list your property. Only accepts Bitcoin, so Bitcoiners get to stay with other Bitcoiners. So it's the perfect thing for the conference. You're coming from abroad, come and stay with a local Bitcoiner. They'll show you around. You'll, won't get ripped off in the waterfront. You'll be able to actually experience South African culture and live with a local Bitcoiner. I think it's a great experience. So Andre has done a great job with their BTC. Super, super cool projects he's got going there. So yeah, head over there, check it out. And then one last thing is, if you are someone watching this and you are interested in sponsoring the events, reach out to myself or Hermann. We're looking for a couple of sponsors still. Got a good opportunity to get in early, get your name out there, and be part of something that we think is going to be very, very cool. So yeah, reach out to us. It's a great conference to get involved in.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I mean, Cape Town itself is, if you've never been, it's definitely a must visit. There's nothing else quite like it. I mean, I'm obviously biased, but I've traveled extensively, and there's something unique about the city. It's just it's the combination of having this massive mountain that sort of hugs the inner city. It does something. There's something about it that's just very different. And if you haven't been to Africa before and you're a little bit sort of hesitant about whether or not I should travel to Africa, then Cape Town is a very, very, very easy entry point for your first time. It's super friendly. It's very accommodating. It's a very well developed tourism destination. and you shouldn't have any hassles, even if you're traveling solo. So yeah, and I say that as someone who's worked in the tourism industry for more than 10 years. It really is it really is something quite special.
And it's the conference happening the best time of year, but in the middle of summer,
Yes.
January.
Yeah.
So the weather in the northern hemisphere sucks. It's cold, it's rainy, it's snowing, it's bleak. Your days are like 30 minutes long. Terrible. Come to South Africa for January, you can have a great time. It's cheap. Eat a lot of meat, whole bunch of steak, talk Bitcoin, talk about fixing the world. It'll be great. Cape Town,
absolutely.
Bitcoin Conference 2024. All right,
awesome,
I think we're going to leave it there. Hermann, thank you so much. I look forward to keep working on this project with you. It's going to be very, very cool. And good to see you again, man. I hope to see you up on the road soon.
Yeah, no, likewise. We'll see you soon.